Welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. If you enjoy our content, please like or subscribe.
Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you want to get something done? Check out K&H Construction. Chris Helms, local guy at Waxahachie, he'll take care of you. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. Today, my very special guest is the Congressman from the Texas 6th Congressional District, Jake Ellzey. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, DV. How are you doing? I'm coming to you from the People's Office here. Let me just get a quick drink of coffee.
Yes.
My Beat Army coffee mug.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly support that.
Okay, I'm ready now. I've had my coffee. I'm ready.
Now we're ready. Now we're good. We're good.
Throw it at me, my fellow Navy veteran.
Good to see you.
Here's the other side. Go Navy, beat Army. I have been known to show those at committee hearings, much to the chagrin of my Army veteran friends. But we did win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy again.
You did. I need to get that cup. I do need to get that cup, definitely. So I got to be showing my colors too. There's a lot of Army vets here in Ellis County, and I like to remind them that the Navy.
And our office treats them all the same. Listen, since you mentioned it, before we go into the political stuff, remember, constituent services is my favorite thing to do. If you are a veteran who is listening to this wonderful man who's providing this service for our community that you do, irrespective of whether anybody agrees with me, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, if you are a veteran who has served, to include the Coast Guard or Border Patrol or anything else like that, or any of the military services, and you need help with the VA, you need help with getting your military records, you need help with disability, and spouses, I'm talking to you. Notice I said spouses, not wives. I mean spouses. If you've got a member who needs help and you've decided that they need help, come get help, and we can help guide you to get that. It's extremely important to me that no matter what I do in my congressional job, helping out my fellow veterans is my priority. And we have a great staff. We have a great district staff who is super friendly and super effective in dealing with the VA and all the federal agencies. So
Scott's pretty awesome, and you've been helpful to me when I've needed you, and I'm very grateful for that.
Julia and Lauren are great too. So is Julie, our district director. So come find you. Usually you can find me at the Brookshires in Midlothian. Because I come home and I get to do my grocery shopping, then come find me. We can help you out.
Perfect. So, I wanted to have you on. It is that time for election, and then there's always so much stuff going on, and I'm definitely going to get to all that, but I just kind of wanted you to give a quick little brief intro for people who may not know their congressman. This district is growing, and you know that. Especially Ellis County side where I'm at, it's growing like crazy. I mean, there was like a 5,000 house development just approved. So for those that don't know you, Congressman, can you tell them about you?
Sure. My name is Jake Ellzey. I grew up in Perryton, Texas, born and raised 7 miles from the Oklahoma border. Went to the Naval Academy in 1988. I was fortunate enough to get an appointment from Congressman Bo Bolcher to go to the Naval Academy. I wanted to fly jets, and as soon as I graduated in 1992, I went to flight school and got helicopters, and I did 2 deployments at sea in 96 and 98 in the H-60 Seahawk, and then I didn't want to fly helicopters for the rest of my life, so I got a transition to jets, flew F-14 Tomcats, F-18 Super Hornets, and F-18 Hornets for the next 11 years, retired in 2012. I did a deployment with SEAL Team 5 with my friend Morgan Luttrell, who's my colleague and sadly is leaving. I got married to my beautiful wife Shelby in 2007, right after I got back from Iraq. We have 2 beautiful kids, McCall and Jack, that we are raising on our property of 10 acres just outside Ovilla, technically Midlothian. And after I retired from the Navy, I was on the Texas Veterans Commission, where I got to help out your and my brothers and sisters in arms. And then I also did a deployment overseas as a contractor, flying King Airs out of Afghanistan, out of Bagram. Did 2 of those pumps, and then I got hired by a local airline that's based in Dallas, and did that until I got elected to the State House and then to Congress. I got elected to the State House in 2020, and then succeeded my predecessor, Ron Wright, in a special election in 2021. So I've been here for 4.5 years. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. I'm on Defense Appropriations, Labor HHS, Labor, Health and Human Services and Education. And I'm also on Interior, and I'm also on the Small Business Committee, chaired by our colleague and my neighbor, Roger Williams, out of Weatherford. So it's It's the opportunity of a lifetime to continue with my public service. I do so with quiet professionalism. You don't see me very often, except I'm probably on your show more often than I am on anything else. But my goal is mission accomplishment, not clicks and affirmation from media appearances. So I think that being a quiet professional representing my God, my family, and my community is how people prefer me to operate. And thus far, I have a lot to show for it, and I'm grateful every day. There's a finite number of days that I get to be the congressman here. I know that. So walking up the east steps of the Capitol are a privilege every time I can. I'm not doing it today because it's 15 degrees and my knees hurt. The Navy broke my knees and broke my shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a fair weather step climber on the eastern steps, but and we were in a cold snap. I did, however, shovel 2 feet of snow out of the driveway at the place where I live yesterday. So anyway, it's a real pleasure and an honor to serve this community for as long as they'll have me.
It is re-election time, Congressman Ellzey, and what makes you want to keep doing this? Because this isn't easy on a family. This, you have kids, you have a life, you have a family, and you're having to be away, and there's a lot that goes into being a congressman, more so than even local offices and stuff, and those are nothing to sneeze at. But having to go away and deal with some of the things that happen on the federal level, this takes a toll on you. What makes you want to keep serving the people of Texas 6?
Mission accomplishment, and it's always been about that. Service is what I've done since I was 18 years old. Is just a manifestation of my way of going forward, and for the opportunity that I can and to do it, provide great services to the constituents in our district at a time when certainly the previous 4 years prior to Trump getting reelected, the federal government kind of went astray, and so helping out the local populace, my constituents, in a way that is helpful to them, especially the veterans, then I keep doing it. I was an airline pilot before, so I don't need to tell you that this is not something that I do for the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
If I did that, I would be going back to the airlines. This is about services and fulfilling the plan that I think that was there for me for many, many years. It's a great honor to do it. And there's a lot of things that we get to do up here that most people don't know about. And in the defense realm, I get to do that because it's, job number one of any government is protection of her citizens. And at the federal level, we do that with Homeland Security, and we do that with our military. Since I'm on defense appropriations, we're the ones who actually purchase the systems and pay the troops. So those appropriations bills that get our troops 3.8% pay raise, that came out of our committee. And that's the one where, the authorization is the National Defense Authorization Act that says, yes, you can do this. And then the Appropriations Committee, which is actually in the Constitution, that's where we pay for these things. So buying the best gear in a world that's very, very dangerous, the best equipment, the best ships, the best submarines, the best aircraft, the best spacecraft as we go into the space realm, the best cyber, the best everything for our troops, plus providing for a stable home for them, giving them enough money to provide for their families without any extra needs. That's what I'm responsible for doing, and I get to do a lot of that, and in ways that it's not really that important to a lot of the members in the folks in the district, but I get to do that, and it's extremely important to me that we're the best equipped nation on earth to prevent war, to prevent it. But at a time in which there seems to be a lot of countries who are going down the path of 1938 trying to start World War III, that if they are attacking us, then we can prevail and defeat them.
Right.
And so I think you've still seen through the actions in Venezuela and Iran that President Trump took in Iran, that our military is without equal, our professionals are without equal, and so is our equipment, and we aim to keep it that way.
Since you got into this part, we did end up going Venezuela and getting Maduro out of there. What are your thoughts on that decision? There were some people who had complaints about how it was done, and some people who all of a sudden became constitutional scholars about what the war powers and what the president can and cannot do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we can keep this real short. The reality is that in 1989, Operation Just Cause, George H.W. Bush did the exact same thing in the exact same manner with the same notification for Congress. For the record, there's no troops on the ground in Venezuela. So if you look at the law, I mean, people can see a tweet and it says War Powers Act and not have any idea what's in it. Everything Donald Trump did was legal. I was asked by a Democrat colleague before it happened. He goes, "What do you think he's doing there with these boat strikes?" And I said, "Well, the terrorists, we have intel on the ground. I guarantee you that we're watching from the distribution center where they get the drugs to taking them to the dock. We have people on the docks who are taking pictures of everybody who's on it. They're directly linked to Maduro. And then once they get into international waters, which for the record is 12 miles outside of any land boundary, that is now international waters. We're taking those boats out, and we are drawing a very straight line from all of those drugs coming into the United States to kill Americans to Nicolas Maduro. And at some point, we will have enough information to go get him, just like we did in Operation Just Cause with Manuel Noriega, and we'll go get him." And 2 months later, that's exactly what we did. And I knew with that armada that we had built up in the Caribbean that was the end result of this. And since then, it was a textbook. I have to give props to our Army brethren, the 160th out of Fort Campbell, Delta Force, no American loss of life, and an absolutely perfect operation with a lot of heroism. The lead helicopter pilot flying a MH-47 Chinook twin rotor for the 160th, the man who led the whole mission, was hit 4 times in his leg, and he still landed and did not abort. And then they evacuated him after they got Maduro, put the co-pilot by himself in that gigantic helicopter, took off and got that helicopter out of there. The heroism exhibited by our soldiers specifically in that operation is just mind-blowing. And I think that there should be some medals of honor written up for that. So to answer the question, this is a carbon copy of what George H.W. Bush did in 1989. There is precedent, and it was legal.
I remember that. And that's kind of what I pointed out whenever I would see people, they have no concept. I guess they didn't check that on Google. We've done that before with Manuel Noriega. And he had a lot of the same words that Maduro had, and then he ended up the same way as Maduro. It's kind of interesting how that went down. We're still,
Trump even notified the Gang of Eight, which is the 8th highest ranking to include the Intel committee chairs. And that's exactly what H.W. Bush did in 1989. Is a threat to the United States off the map? Yes. With zero loss of life to the United States without boots on. And in Panama, we had a lot of boots on the ground. We were done in 88 minutes. 88 minutes. And there are no residual troops on the ground for this operation in Venezuela. So it's kind of hard to argue with success, with legality, and with a perfect operation. So those that had, notice the people who are against it have now gotten really quiet.
Colombia got really, matter of fact, they're in the White House today, didn't they? Aren't they? Or something like that.
I guess he was in the White House today. We finally passed our appropriations bill today, so we've been paying attention to the rule vote and then to the final appropriations bill today. So the shutdown should end today. So that's what I've been paying attention to. But I will say, back to the Venezuela thing, Venezuela was the major benefactor with their oil to Cuba, and as my friends from Florida like to call it, and I see Cuba falling next. So the regime that's murderous, that's repressive in Cuba may be about to fall because they don't have their sugar daddy down in Venezuela helping them out anymore.
They're in trouble. They're in big trouble. And then Mexico stopped delivering to them because Mexico is delivering oil to them too. So there's a message that Trump is sending in the hemisphere. Definitely.
That's right.
There's a message. And, you had China involved a lot too with Venezuela and kind of sending a message there. And then you have Iran where, we did go and hit those sites and, there were people marching on the streets and there are people wanting to, want freedom. They want to be free. They want to be able to live a regular life. And Iran goes and shuts off the internet and starts massacring people.
36,000 last count I heard.
What are your thoughts on that and how we should be responding to that?
I'm going to answer this with a very simple answer for now, because I don't care what administration it is. If we are in the midst of any kind of negotiation or show of force, I hesitate to say what we should see. I think it's very clear that throughout the world, a murderous regime like this needs to go away. They're not popular with their people. Actually, Tehran doesn't have water. Tehran doesn't have water.
Yeah.
The capital city of Iran doesn't have any water. So they're not providing the services, but they still have a nuclear program going and they have a ballistic missile program going. The world would be safer without the regime. President Trump is how he goes about answering and dealing with these things is different than I am. But we've been watching this murderous regime foment terrorism throughout the world since 1979. I can think of no better thing than for the Ayatollah to fall, however that happens. Russia seems to be the place where all these despots go, as in the case of Assad from Syria. My guess is there's a plane that's waiting for the Ayatollah to take him back to Moscow or Siberia or hell, where he deserves to go. Prior to the so-called revolution, which was a repressive taking of power, the Iranian people were contributors in a great way to societies of all types. They're a secular and moderate population. They're not radicalized. They are Shia. And that would make the entire region a lot safer if the Shia, and of course in Saudi Arabia, they're Sunni, and they're not Arab, they're Persian. We could get into the weeds on this, but we're not going to. But the entire region would be a much better place now that Israel has taken Hezbollah and Hamas off the map. Syria, the dictator has fallen. We have an opportunity there. And if Iran kicks out the Ayatollah and reestablishes a moderate and governing authority in Iran, it'll do a great deal to help out in world peace and the arms races that we have going in the Middle East, because all of the, and quite frankly, terrorism throughout the world will take a huge hit when the Ayatollahs are gone.
Right. Yeah.
And they deserve to go. Murdering 36,000 people, that is in 2 days. I think the people are ready to take charge and take back their country. This isn't Afghanistan. Iran has a history of stable governance prior to the revolution. And so this isn't an Afghanistan, and I'm not proposing that there be American troops on the ground. I don't think there would have to be. But President Trump does have a number of forces that he has sent over there, to include at least one aircraft carrier, and the negotiations are ongoing according to him. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
That's a lot of firepower off the coast. That's a lot of firepower. Well, that is a lot. That is a big can of whoop ass. That really is. So, and the other thing that we've talked about before, and we've talked about Ukraine and what's going on over there. What's the latest that you've gathered, Congressman, on that, and what are your thoughts on how that's going?
I think it's continued to be a stalemate because of what's going on in Iran. The United States was going to get Russia and Ukraine together to discuss peace. That has been put on the back burner because of what's going on in Iran. I think it's pretty much where it was 3 years ago. There haven't been a great deal of gains except a tremendous loss of life. The Russians are the aggressors. They are an imperialist power. They went into Ukraine to reestablish what was left of the Soviet Union, take 25% of the world's grain, which is what Donbass has. Which, if you think that blackmailing the world with 25% of the world's wheat is something that we can allow for, we cannot. In addition, gas fields that have a lot of natural gas in Ukraine. This is an imperialist action, and it was evil, and it's a genocide. That's what when you kidnap tens of thousands of Ukrainian kids and send them to Russia for re-education. That's what they've been doing since 1931 with the Holodomor. Before the Holocaust, that's what the Russians did. That's what Stalin did to Ukraine, and he killed 8 million people in Ukraine through starvation. So they're going to continue to keep fighting, but right now, as I understand, the lines are largely frozen, which is at this point 4 years in this month, in February, we had already, by the time the United States got involved in World War II, it took 3.5 years to win. So this thing needs to end. But let's make no mistake on who the aggressor was and who the evil ones are. The Russians don't build anything. They're not doing this for the benevolence of the people. They kill, steal, and destroy, and they always have. That's what they do. So if anybody is making a moral equivalent of the Ukrainians versus the Russians, and by the way, I'm going to say this again, Vladimir Putin is the most corrupt man on the planet. He is the richest man on the planet because he's a thug and a mafioso. He stays in power because he pays people off. So I don't want to hear any discussions about, we have never used alliances with anybody as and saying corruption, they're corrupt. Well, I mean, gosh almighty. Mm-hmm. That's not an argument if there's good versus evil. And Zelensky has been cleaning up. And one other thing on that is, according to their constitution, they can't hold elections until the war is over. And the war is certainly not over.
Yeah.
So the election thing, I understand. Hey, yes, we continue to have elections during war. That's what our constitution says. Theirs is different, but I doubt that they figured they'd be in a 4-year war with the world's second largest military 4 years on.
Zelensky has his problems, but I mean, this is I mean, they're a little country fighting, like you said, Russia, who could just throw people and keep throwing people and keep throwing people. It's like an unlimited amount of people is what they've done, attrition throughout their history, and still 4 years later, it's still hanging on there. Now,
wherever Russia is, they kill, steal, and destroy. That's what they've done in Syria. That's what they've done in Africa through the Wagner Group. That's all a front. This is about imperialism. This is about human slavery. This is about gold. This is about oil. This is about gas. This is about power. This is about wealth. This is about corruption. This is about evil. Vladimir Putin is not somebody that you can deal with. We keep, he's been in power since 1999, DV, and he has fooled everybody when they think that he's trustworthy and you can make a deal with him. He doesn't want that war to end. So if anybody thinks that he's ready to end it, he'll just keep pouring people at it, because that's what Stalin did, and that's what every dictator in Russia has done in the past. Is they just keep throwing more bodies. For instance, one of the stories of World War II is, since they didn't have good mining clearing equipment in Russia, that when they were going into a minefield, they would make all of their soldiers link up arm in arm and walk across the field to find the mines. There's no moral equivalency here.
No. Now, Jake, there's one thing that may have, the local folks here in your district kind of scratching their.
But before you ask that question, there's no money going to Ukraine in this last appropriations bill.
But we're not giving them money right now.
There's no money in the appropriation. Well, there's money, but it's in there. It's more in the CR than it is in the appropriations bill. So we're not sending $40 billion to Ukraine like we did at the beginning of the war.
Excellent. Now, what I was saying was that people might be scratching their heads in your district about, and maybe you could explain kind of what this whole Greenland thing is about.
Well, I think when the president started talking about Greenland fervently, it probably caught a bunch of people off guard. He is the most incredible salesman that has ever occupied the Oval Office. What he is saying may not be what he's intending. It's all part of a negotiating point, just like the tariffs are. The tariffs are saying, you're not playing fair with us, so I'm going to jack up the tariffs because my economy can afford that better than yours can. So let's make a deal here, and then we'll bring those tariffs down. Greenland is a part of the Greenland-Iceland United Kingdom gap, the GIUK gap. The Russians have their submarines, their ballistic missile submarines in Murmansk, which is in the northwest corner of Russia, right adjacent to Norway, our NATO ally. When they want those submarines to come down and threaten us, they go around Norway and then through the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap. There are sections of water in between there. Or if China wants to launch ballistic missiles at us, it goes over the Arctic Circle. That happens to be Greenland. Greenland is a territory of Denmark. It is largely self-governing. It's the largest island on Earth, and it has 60,000 people. Those 60,000 people don't have a military. So defending Greenland is something that we have to do. And with that in mind, Trump's going, now, wait a minute, this is our backyard. The missiles that are going to fly over Greenland aren't going to hit Denmark. They're going to hit the United States. Yes, we do have a treaty to build. We basically have carte blanche to build bases there. I think somebody said it best. It's why would we lease when we can buy if it's the territory that is one of our first lines of defense. So I don't know what's going on with the negotiations after the president went to talk with the NATO members at Davos. Then it got real quiet. So I can only assume, which I'm not privy to, there's some kind of motion going forward on what to do with Greenland. I never believed for a second that we were going to put troops on the ground there. We already have troops on the ground in Greenland. We have a Space Force base in the northwest corner of Greenland. So this isn't a territory that we don't already have an agreement with the Danes on. This was to get their attention, like he always does. And Donald Trump is the ultimate attention getter with the things that he says. But there's always a purpose behind it. Like I said, I'm not sure what that is going forward with Greenland. To summarize, Greenland is important for the strategic defense of the United States. Period. Dot. And so whatever we can do to defend it and take care of it, we probably should. Denmark can't do it. They only have 6 million people. Like I said, the 60,000 people there, they're fishermen. That's not what they do. So he's negotiating with Denmark and Greenland to come up with a way to defend that territory, because he knows that our biggest threats are the ballistic missiles from Russia and China, and those are going to fly right over Greenland.
Right. Right.
I hope that answered your question.
A little, yeah. I mean, there's just so much going on. I love your command of these things. This is what you pay attention to these things. That's why we spend so much time on it whenever I have you on. The coming closer to home last year was really tough, Jake. It was really tough on my family. As you know, I've been with the feds for, about 28 years between the Navy and what I do now. And it was a really rough time last year with this shutdown. And some people had it a lot worse than me. A lot of people had it a lot worse than I did. So I'm grateful to God for that. But there was coworkers who were absolutely suffering. They couldn't pay for their autistic treatment for their kids. They just didn't have that money. It was eat or do that. It was such a horrible event. What are your thoughts on how that went down and what you'd like to see legislatively to stop that from happening?
Well, we passed all 12 appropriations bills out of the House, and Chuck Schumer, and remember, and so when anybody talks about keeping the government open, we're talking about appropriations. The appropriations bills, the spending bills that write the check to keep the lights on, those are out of the appropriations bills. They come out of the House, then they go to the Senate. They start in the House, per the Constitution. And then they go to the Senate, and the Senate needs 60 votes. Well, we have 53 Republicans, one of whom never votes for an appropriations bill. So you got 52 Republicans. You need 8 Democrats. So in order to get 8 Democrats, they're going to do what they do in the Senate to get 8 Democrats. Chuck Schumer is looking at a primary challenge from AOC, and he got burned back in March for supporting keeping the government open. March of 25.
I remember, yeah.
And so this time that wasn't going to happen. So he was going to burn it all down. And he did. This was all Chuck Schumer. And they kept blaming the Republicans. I don't know how they get away with doing that. But it was it was all the Democrats who voted no. So we couldn't get to 60. And so they it was Schumer's shutdown. You notice he's not talking about it anymore. And now he's talking about keeping the government open because he got burned. We all got burned. I'm not looking for a political edge on saying he did this, he did that. Chuck Schumer is responsible by withholding those votes to keep the government open for the pain that was inflicted on the American people for 43 days. Period. End of story. And he knows it. And we all come off looking bad because Congress now has a minus 20 approval rating from the American people. They lump, how does Congress do? Well, I can tell you most of the people that I know are working really, really hard. There's some extremes on the right and left. And there's some knuckleheads in the Senate that are trying to make political points. But bottom line is Chuck Schumer is looking at a primary challenge from a very popular politician in AOC. She's very young. She's got a lot of energy. This is all he knows. He's been in government for, I think, 50 years now.
Right.
This is the only thing he knows. And so he would do anything to beat back a challenge from the left. So he shut down the government. But it hurt the American people. It hurt everybody. It hurt our standing. But most importantly, it hurt the American people. So I don't think anybody has the appetite to do that again, which is why President Trump made a deal with Chuck Schumer on this spending bill.
Yeah.
And said, vote yes on it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk about that, Jake. There was a lot of, at first they didn't think they were going to be able to get some of the conservatives to come on board with that because of some of the spending, some of the things I guess the pork that was in it, the deal making that happens when you have to make legislation go through. And some people were upset with that.
No, I think the main reason that there was a struggle was because of the SAVE Act, which should be separate legislation. The Senate's been sitting on it, but John Thune has promised to vote on the SAVE Act, which is voter verification through identification. But attaching that to an appropriations bill is not appropriate. It's just not. So holding that on, and so Tim Burchett and one other member had a meeting with the president at the White House on Monday night. They got it all smoothed over, and today we passed it. When there's a one-seat majority, there's always going to be somebody who can be a kingmaker. And if they've got an issue that's extremely important to them, they can hold the whole thing up because you can count on Thomas Massey from Kentucky not voting for it. We could we couldn't lose any more votes. So the president got involved, made a deal with everybody involved, to include the Democrats, and now we're keeping the lights on. We did have 3 days of shutdown. But nobody lost their pay. The military was not at risk for pay loss. There's probably a signing ceremony imminently at the White House.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd love to be there for that. I was there for the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. I got to go to the White House for that signing. A very proud moment for me.
But you get to be here with me. I mean,
But it's more important to me that the people in the district hear directly from me. My word is my bond. It's important that they see me as an honest broker, because what you see on social media right now it can come from any source, and it doesn't have to be true. And if I I wouldn't have enough time in the day to play whack-a-mole to knock down things that are coming from the trolls. There are a number of trolls coming from Russia and China that aim to divide our nation. And I'm telling you, this is the algorithm is not there to make you proud to be an American or proud to be
absolutely not
anything. It is there to psychologically manipulate you into being angry and divisive, because a weak United States, a divided United States, only makes Russia and China stronger. And there's a number of bots out there that are just sending out pure falsehoods that are absolutely unconscionable. But, how do you stop it? If you believe in free speech, it's up to those social media properties to patrol their own devices for bots. That you don't want Congress getting involved in that.
I was telling my daughter that yesterday because she was upset. She's young, and when you're young and everything's paid for you, you could be a little bit more gummy about things and emotional about things. And she was upset about something. And I said, there's billions of dollars that goes in these algorithms, baby. If I went on my show and I started talking all kinds of crap all day, I would probably have 5 million people on there. I would be Joe Rogan if I went over and I talk crap, but I don't do it. And so you don't grow like that, because that's what sells. That's what makes money. And, it's infiltrating our youth. But I wanted to ask you, because I know that I'm pushing on time here. I wanted to ask you, some of your local constituents had a problem with the vote that included that NED funding, that National Endowment for Democracy or something like that. And then something about some vehicle trackers or something like vehicle kill switches. And that you voted. It was part of a big bill, and I know how you like to appropriations and keeping that regular order going. But you ended up having to do a vote, and some people were upset about that. Can you talk to your constituents about that?
Yes, and here's where the misinformation comes in, and it's a fact. National Endowment for Democracy was an organization, a bipartisan organization started by, not under, but by Ronald Reagan to help democracies throughout the world stay strong so that we don't have to fight there, because it's a world economy. And Ronald Reagan always believed in supporting nascent democracies and keeping them strong. And so both of the votes that you're talking about were amendments. They weren't part of the big bill. In the first case with NED, we have a well-meaning but often misinformed member who will take a tweet or a recommendation from somebody that is using false data and talking about an organization like NED, which has done tremendous work over the years. Occasionally they will give a grant to somebody. In this case, they gave a grant to an organization that did one sector of work. In another sector of work, they did something that they shouldn't have. NED rescinded that grant and took back the money, even if it wasn't for what they had done. So they're largely self-policing, and they've done tremendous work. And I stand by that vote, and I stand by the work of NED without question, because if you got to dig deeper and find out what the truth is on what you're hearing about organizations like NED. And my colleague and friend from Arizona is flat out wrong on the allegations that were made about NED. And the second one was another amendment from my colleague from South Carolina, who happens to be running for governor, and he's running behind. So that amendment that he put forth was a solution in search of a problem. So he said, well, it doesn't say anything about the kill switches in this bill. Well, that's not what the bill was about, but we're going to make the amendment about that so he can get news media attention, get his bona fides, with his constituents in South Carolina and get elected to governor. It was an absolute nonsensical amendment. It has nothing to do with kill switches. That is what is so maddening up here is when you see an amendment to a bill there are a certain number of members here which authorship guarantees failure. And that's one of them. And you will see a number of those people who for whom getting attention is more important than getting results. And I don't play that game. And that was a nonsensical amendment, and it has nothing to do with kill switches on vehicles. Never did. Neither did the bill. So that's why I'm saying it's a solution in search of a problem. And the messaging that comes with it is absolutely frustrating, but that's the world that I'm in right now. And so I'm happy to bat those down with facts and data instead of talking about assumptions, and do that all the time. So if anybody wants to come see me in Corsicana, I'll be there February 7th for the forum that they're going to have. And I'm happy to discuss those in person because people have strong feelings about it. I get it. But I'm also happy to refute some falsehoods about anything that I've voted on or especially amendments like those.
Okay. Man, I could talk to you. There's just so much, Jake.
Well, I don't think I'm running out of time unless you are.
No, I just don't want to. I don't want one of your staffers to, get me because.
Well, when they punch me in the face and say time's up, then we'll quit.
Okay,
how about that?
That'll work.
That was all the time.
So right now, the big issue, and you have a lot of paid processors, and you have a lot of things going on when it comes to ICE and immigration enforcement. Now, I've had you on the show, and we've talked about your stance on cartels, immigration, etc. I want you to talk to me about what's been happening when it comes to this, maybe something you're seeing that maybe your constituents are not seeing, and the actions that happen with the two different protesters or three different protesters who were shot and two who are deceased in Minnesota.
Tragedies for a number of people involved, the folks who got shot and the folks who had to do it. And as they are both ongoing, I also, you know me well enough, and I'm consistent in this, I don't speculate on what. However, I do see a trend in the United States with leftist protesters. They are leftist groups which are funded by nefarious organizations that are anti-American, convince people that it's a good idea to get in their car and start driving towards law enforcement. Never smart. And if you're using that car to threaten law enforcement, you are now using a weapon to threaten law enforcement. And if you don't follow their orders as you're driving towards them, there's a good chance that that's not going to end well for you. And so, as I understand it, in the first shooting, the officer had already been dragged some distance before and had been hit by a car. And those are the tactics that are being taught to them to incite violence against law enforcement. The methods that the Department of Homeland Security is using, where they're going, I have no insight on that. That is the responsibility of the executive branch to put out that information. As you know, there's been a great deal of fraud in Minnesota with taxpayer dollars being used, especially during COVID, for a number of fraudulent businesses. But back to the question of what's going on in Minnesota with the shootings, let's wait until the investigations are complete, because the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota are leftists. They are failed leaders. They have chosen not to protect the federal agents with local law enforcement. When you do that, you are setting them up for failure. It's almost like they want this to happen, and it's a tragedy for the United States. It's a tragedy for those involved, and it's not necessary. We do have illegal aliens in this country who are violent, that they have intel on and need to go get. But, I think you're probably going to see a shift in the methodology used going forward. But, if that were to occur in Texas, there would be local law enforcement to protect those federal agents doing their jobs. Jacob Fry has left them out to do their job. In fact, they've inhibited their sharing information for them to be threatened. And it's a bad situation. My roommate is from Minnesota. He hates to see what happens. They have a saying in Minnesota nice. Mm-hmm. There's so many good things about Minnesota and so many good people there. But what has happened in Minneapolis with illegal immigration from Somalia the defrauding, and then the crime is something that needs to be addressed for the safety of the American citizens who live there. And it's really sad just to see the whole thing.
It's horrible. I mean, it's already, as a law enforcement officer, there is nothing that situation in general is just a tense situation in itself. And then you have all these things going on, and then you have somebody just running in, and there's just all kinds of things bad that can happen if you impede on a law enforcement officer doing their duties.
Well, I have a long memory, and I remember COVID. Jacob Fry and Governor Walz let that city burn.
They did.
They let it burn before they sent in police. I don't forget. I've got some things I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember those two men are single-handedly responsible for the destruction of Minneapolis during COVID, during the protests. They let it burn. In fact, Governor Walz's wife commented out loud how much she loved the smell of that burning smoke, that was good. Those protests, that was good. Man, that's so
These
wrong.
people are broken. They're just broken.
They're broken.
And
That's a good way to put it.
They're broken.
Can I steal that?
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
they're definitely broken. I mean, I don't know who thinks that is a
What's
great
wrong
idea.
with them?
I don't get it.
You're protecting illegal immigrants over the American citizens.
Well, even if you have a problem, let's say you have a problem with the way that Trump is doing things, Jake. I mean, that changes at your office. That changes in Congress. That, if you don't like those laws, they change in Congress. They don't change on the street, impeding a federal officer from doing their duties.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where you change it. That's not where you change it. So it's just a terrible thing. Now, as far
as the leftists are predators acting like victims, and unfortunately, there's a significant number of middle-aged white women that they are using as their tools, and that's the fact. That's a fact. If you look around at all the violence going on, there's a significant number of radicalized liberal white women. I don't understand it. I don't get it, but it's empirical. I'm not making it up.
Yeah, it was actually brought up by a couple of news things that I've heard about that it was that exact same demographic that's actually radicalizing, which is just interesting to me. Now, as far as when it comes to drugs and fentanyl, I know you've always talked about fentanyl, the cartels. What do you think about the progress we're making with that? What would you like to see done in the last 2 years? What have we been doing with that, with stopping that flow? Obviously we shut down the border. That helps. But as far as dealing with the cartel?
Well, the results speak for themselves on drugs coming in. The designation as a terrorist organization of the cartels by the Trump administration, that's what I've been calling for since I first ran for Congress. In fact, when I ran for the State House, thank you very much, President Trump, for doing that. Once you have the terrorist organization designation, stand by, look up in the sky, see what's there, because it might be coming for you. What happened with the drug boats out of Venezuela, followed by the toppling of, followed by what's going to happen in Cuba. I've been around my...
Yeah, you got the Cuba. I
Cuba.
like that. Yeah.
I did minor in Spanish, so sometimes it pops up again. Coupled with Mexico being the source for the product of fentanyl, which, again, since I started running for office, I have said fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction, and President Trump put in an executive order that said the exact same thing. So Mexico is our number one trading partner. It is our direct neighbor. And my guess is, but I'm not briefed on any of this, that Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, who has to say, we're not going to cooperate, she might be in ways that you and I are not going to know about on the evening news. And that's my guess, is that we've got to stop the flow of fentanyl, which is a weapon of mass destruction. It is a poison. It is not a drug. It is not meant for addiction. It is meant for death.
It is. Put
together by China, and then, or the compounds coming from China, and President Trump has gone after China for that very strongly. Nothing comes out of China without them knowing it. There's only Americans dying at the rate of 70,000 a year from fentanyl poisoning. Not anybody else. No Chinese are dying that way. No British are dying that way. It's all Americans. That is part of the total war mentality of the Chinese, because warfare, I think we talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Warfare isn't necessarily mano a mano, airplane versus airplane, ship versus ship, sub versus sub. They're involved in total war. They're talking about cyber. They're talking about bots that are meant to divide our country ideologically and psychologically, as well as using these compounds that are coming in to kill our next generation, the people who are going to provide the tax base, start up new businesses, have kids who are going to enter the military, plus not just to mention the kids who are going to enter the military. He's weakening our country. Xi Jinping is weakening our country by killing 70,000 Americans every year with the death that he ships from his country. And he knows about it. So anybody who thinks that Xi Jinping is a trade partner without ill intent, they're kidding themselves. They're absolutely, his goal is world domination. And he has to create 1 million new jobs every year. However, he's got a problem on his hands because with the one-child policy that they instituted decades ago, he is a house built on shifting sands. He doesn't have much time left. The only hope he can do is, and this is what dictators do when their system starts to fail, they start wars. We need to be prepared for that in the Indo-PACOM, which is why I'm proud to be on defense appropriations and make sure we have weapons like the F-47, more carriers, F-A-X-X, the Columbia submarine, and improved pay for our troops, and better tanks and better weapons.
There was something mentioned, I forgot to, when we were talking national security earlier, that President Trump had mentioned about a new battleship. I know he wasn't talking about like the old school battleships with the, like the Missouri, but what have you seen come of that's come your way for appropriation?
Well, he's talked about two things. He's talked about the Golden Fleet, which is one of the battleships that you're mentioning, which there is no current design for or acquisitions process in place for that yet. But he is emphasizing, much like Ronald Reagan did in 1983, we're going to do Star Wars. We're gonna beat you, and I think that's part of the. We can do that. We have the strength, we have the ingenuity, we have the American people, we have the industrial base. Although it's starting to catch up, it's a little weak, but we have it. We can do that. So all comers, Donald Trump is trying to build up in Reagan-esque ways our military so that we don't have to fight those wars. Because he's talking. So we spent, including reconciliation, about $1 trillion on defense. Now, I have told you a number of times that I think the Pentagon, instead of a Pentagon, should be a triangle. You cut out two of those rings, make one of them a shooting range and the other one a gym. Don't fill them with people who can get in the way of progress. In World War II, we built the arsenal of democracy without a Pentagon. Pentagon wasn't even built. We went from the user to industry and the president all going, build these guys the best military on the planet. He's trying to do the same thing. He's starting with saying there's an intent here to have a real battleship that we're going to build, stand by, and also Golden Dome that's going to protect us against ballistic missiles. We're going to partner with the Israelis who have done tremendous work on protecting their people from all the ballistic missiles and rockets that have been aimed at them over the years and shot at them. And so right now they're both conceptual, but Donald Trump has asked for $1.5 trillion next cycle, which gets us to 4.8% of GDP. Those are very much like Ronald Reagan-era numbers, so that we can build a defense department that will prevent wars instead of have to fight them. But if we do have to fight them, we overwhelm. That shouldn't be a fair fight. Well, we're equal with China. I don't want to be equal with China. I don't want to be equal with anybody. We want to do our own thing. We want to be left alone. The American people only want to be left alone. I don't want to be left alone. I'm a combat veteran. You've heard me say this before. I'm the last guy who wants to go to war. My son's 14. He patrols our house with an airsoft gun. My son's going to join the military. Do you think I want him to go fight in a war? Absolutely not. I want him to go be in the military the way he wants to be and do whatever he wants to do, whether he enlists or becomes an officer and has the best weapons that prevent war instead of having to fight him. But if we have to fight, he doesn't get close to getting killed. Hit my kid, your kid, anybody else's kids. That's extremely important to me. So spending 4.8 GDP on a defense department that has reestablished it's about lethality, as we have shown in Iran, as we have shown in Venezuela. Do not mess with the United States of America, because we will destroy whoever comes after us. That's the goal. That's the only thing that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin understand. They don't understand weakness. Ukraine started because Joe Biden was the weakest president we've had in recent memory, certainly, I think, in this century.
Agreed.
That's how that war got started. That's how October 7th happened. If the enemy, and there is good and evil in this world, you and I both know that.
Absolutely.
To act like because it's 2025, thinking that there's Putin Putin's a nice. We can do a deal with him. He's a good guy. Xi Jinping's a good guy. They've made it clear when the enemy tells you their goal is world domination, which is what Xi Jinping has said. Believe him.
Mm-hmm.
When the Iranians say they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and Hamas says the same thing, it's in their dogma. Believe them. They showed it October 7th. If you show weakness, then you're going to get the bull's horns. And so we can't show weakness. And I admire Donald Trump for saying we're going 1.5 trillion next year because our country needs it for our own protection and to prevent war.
Now, is you said your kid's going to join, and is it okay if he ends up joining the Army, or we're not going to let that happen?
I have never actually talked to him about where he should go. It's in his blood. It's in his soul. God put it there. My son is a protector. And so I don't know if he joins. I don't know what he does. But my son, who I'm obviously very proud of, and he's probably getting embarrassed if he hears about this, but he's a protector. And you are too. You volunteered to protect our country. And I think the distinction that people need to understand is the people who join the military, be it enlist or officers, they're there to defend our country. Very rarely do you have anybody because they're the ones that go to church. They're in the Scouts, helping people, helping elderly across the street. They're the people who help in your community, the service-oriented people, the servant's heart. The good people don't want to go inflict harm on anybody else or take anybody else's life, but they're willing to do so. And that's what I love about our country. That's what I love about my son. Obviously, I'm getting didn't expect to go down this path, but I'm proud of him. And
nothing wrong with it.
Wherever he wants to serve, yeah. He said, Dad, I want to be a pilot. But I don't see him walking around the house with an airplane. I see him walking around the house with an airsoft gun. Yeah. For people who don't know, that's a plastic BB. 287 Airsoft is out just east of Waxahachie. We go there for his birthday every year, and you can, people get pretty serious about it. We live on 10 acres. He patrols our house.
Hey,
he's a warrior for God. He's going to be a warrior for our country, and I'm super proud of him.
I think he's going to be a brown shoe. I see it.
I think he's going to be a Marine. I think he's going to be a Marine.
You think he's going to do that? Marine Corps?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We've met a lot of Marines in my time as a member of Congress. Man, they're impressive. And they're very good at recruiting.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have never missed on recruiting. And by the way, they're the only services that has passed an audit 2 years in a row. The Marines are doing stuff right.
They don't mess around. Well, as we close out, why should people send you back to Congress? And if you are reelected, what would the next 2 years, what would you like to focus on?
Well, first of all, I just have to say that I thought 2 years was a long time until I get elected to Congress. We stay so busy up here that it seems like it's every month that we're having this conversation. But as I promised from the very beginning, when I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to earn the trust of the voters back in 2021, I serve you with quiet professionalism in a way that I think represents this district very well, that will make my God, my family, and my constituents proud, that I will serve them to the best of my ability with constituent services, and that I will serve my fellow veteran in a way that there aren't enough of them up here. To always keep them in mind, because you and I both know, and I've made you choke up before, that whenever there is a war and we have people participate, there's a bill that comes due for them later on. You don't know when. It could be a week later, it could be a year, it could be 20, it could be 40 years later. But that bill always comes due, because when you're talking about a good person, a warrior, and a servant, that is not a natural act, is to take another life or participate in combat. Right. So there's a bill that comes due. So taking care of them with my friend Morgan Luttrell, who has he will tell you, that bill came due for him and his brother Marcus. That's extremely important to me, and I have a unique perspective on that, having served on the ground with the SEALs and been a pilot. And also, I'm interested in fiscal responsibility. So as an appropriator, every year that I've been on appropriations, we have cut spending. We have cut spending every year. Every bill I've voted on, signed by the president, has cut spending. And I might add, finally, I have President Trump's endorsement. So if anybody needs any further reason, question whether or not I'm viewed by the White House as a dependable ally and a conservative ally in Congress, there's your answer. He has wholeheartedly endorsed me. That endorsement came out about 4 months ago. I'm very proud to have it. And so I look forward to the next couple of years of earning the trust and confidence of the voters in the district. And as I said, it's finite. I don't expect that I have to earn that vote, and I will continue to try to earn that vote. And I hope through my comportment, my performance, and my services and my staff, who I think I have the best on the planet, both up here in D.C. and back in the district, that they feel well served by the services that I provide them as their elected representative to Congress.
Thank you so much again for coming on my show and just taking any question I could possibly come up with and throw at you. I do appreciate that. I do want to invite you, whenever you get in the district and you're able to come by the Ellis County Veterans Treatment Court. You know, Master Guns Brent Durr is doing big things over there. It's expanded to cover surrounding counties. It's helping a lot of veterans. Right now, I'm mentor to a Marine, and I had a mentee who was Navy, the first one that I had. And I mean, it's been an incredibly rewarding program for these vets who, you know, they lost their way. They didn't lose their honor. And they have a way to come back. I'd love to invite you to come over there and check out one of their court sessions. It's really very beautiful thing to watch these guys come back.
I'd love to. I'm glad that it got set up by the previous DA. I'm glad Judge Wallace, a veteran himself, is the judge of that court. I'm glad that the Texas Veterans Commission provided seed money for that, which is something I worked on, trying to convince the county while I was a Texas Veterans Commission commissioner to start a VTC. And so, and all of your help, DV, I know you have a big role to play in that. I'm very excited about it. I would love to. I will point out that Leader Scalise, when we were in the minority, I was home a lot because the calendar was very wide open. The last 2 years, we've been in D.C. 7 additional weeks each year compared to the previous year. So when people are wondering where I am, I come home, I do my job. On Friday, I'll be doing district work. I have 9 counties currently that I will serve until January of 27. January 27, the redistricting gets me back to 5 counties, but I have 5 counties, nearly a million people that I serve. So it's not that I'm ignoring anybody. I get home whenever I can, but we're up here doing the work of the American people a lot more than we were when we were in the minority under the Democrats. So I'm very proud of that work, but I also reserve the weekend for my family, and we'll continue to do so. I have a 16-year-old girl, 14-year-old boy, and a wife who I adore. Obviously, I have to continue to raise and support and take care of my family.
Yes, sir. That comes first. That only under God. It's God and then family, and it's got to be that way. Thank you again for coming on. Can you stick around after the show real quick?